So today is a very exciting and special day. I am here with Shannon Plumb of Purl Advisors. Now, we're going to be talking about something very relevant and very important today. Shannon is a tech revenue leader and also a go-to-market strategist. We're going to talk about kind of where that expertise meets AI and how do we keep the revenue coming amidst all of this disruption and change. So, Shannon, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me today, Sheryl. I appreciate it.
Of course. So, before we jump in, why don't you tell me a little bit about what inspires you to have such an amazing career in this area, and then also maybe how it has pivoted in the last couple years?
Absolutely. So I was lucky enough to get into tech in the pretty early days and grew my career through tech. And what I loved about it was the quickness that everything was evolving and the best practices that came out of tech and how they really apply to every single vertical in industry that's out there, especially when it comes to driving revenue and repeatable revenue. And so, over the last 2.5 years, I've been fortunate enough to found my company, Purl Advisors, and have the ability to work with many companies at the same time, helping them navigate these interesting times and inflection points in revenue growth, specifically when it comes to how AI colors this growth and the impact that it has on the leaders and the teams that they lead from a mindset perspective and a motivation perspective.
Yeah, so I can see how that I've seen that too, although what we do is synergistic, it overlaps a little bit, although it is very different. And one thing that I can definitely concur is that during this disruptive time, it is anxiety producing, it is distracting, it is impacting productivity and ultimately profitability. So I'm really excited to talk about the title, which is leading through this AI change also while keeping revenue momentum, because at least what I've read and what I've been hearing is that AI transformation is happening, but it's not always profitable, or perhaps not profitable immediately or ever. And so if you can share your insights on that and how to right this ship, I think that would be super helpful.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Happy to. So I think the first thing to think about is that there's a lot of noise when it comes to AI. And just because nobody has a definition yet of what good looks like, we all aspire for it to be impactful. We all aspire to be able to measure some ROI from it. And ultimately, we all aspire to be able to tie it directly to revenue. I think that's the goal of every organization out there. But there is no playbook that we can follow. It's changing every single day with the AI capabilities. And while most companies have found some, maybe call it efficiency with implementing tools that do certain aspects or repetitive skills that are needed within the organization, it's still really hard to tie that efficiency directly to an ROI. So, an example I've seen of that is a lot of companies try to automate things or use AI workflows in order to fulfill some workflow in the organization that are broken. So they come in and they place AI on top of something which is not yet stable, doesn't have a great foundation, which just immediately amplifies all of the problems that were in that workflow, distracts all of the people who were tied to that workflow, and causes people to have to then go back and fix and try to figure out, is it the AI? Is it the foundation they laid it on that was broken? And how do we shore this up so that we can continue moving? So I think because we are moving so quickly and we don't have yet a great judgment or a great scale for what success looks like, it's a very much a experimental time when people are just trying it to see the results and not yet able to say this implementation drove this revenue and it was strictly tied to AI.
Mhm. So it seems like then AI can be used to speed up something that was problematic and make it more problematic and ultimately potentially more costly, or it
Mhm.
could speed up something that if it has a solid foundation as intended. But it seems like it's really important to, it's kind of like maybe if I can make such a simple analogy, considering where you're going to build a house, to understand, are you building it on quicksand? Are you building
Yep.
it on, solid ground? Is that
Yeah, great
fair?
analogy. That's a fair analogy for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So when it comes to companies that are in, execution mode, I was going to say panic mode, but we'll say execution mode as, we need to do this now. What is important to slow down so they can speed up revenue?
Yeah, so I think it's really important for them to assess where they're going to implement AI and how they're going to measure success where they implement it. The other thing that I think is incredibly important is understanding who owns that AI. So there still needs to be somebody in that organization who is accountable, not only for the inputs of data, but also the output, and if that is accurate or not, as well as who is being trained on that, how they're using that in their day-to-day operations, making sure that there is an accountability layer. And then the third thing is that I believe this highlights and puts under the microscope even more severely that humans need to be in the loop and that judgment is becoming a competitive advantage. Anyone can take and implement an AI workflow or use Claude or ChatGPT to get an answer. However, it's the discernment of the human who's reviewing the outcome of that that makes the difference. Because if we both have similar businesses, put the same thing into AI, we're probably going to get the same result or close enough to the same result that we all start sounding very similar. So it's that human editing and the discernment of experience layered on top of AI that really is going to be the competitive differentiator when it comes to, is this driving revenue or not? Is this a distraction or is it actually moving us forward in the right direction?
And so it seems like having clarity then on who owns what, that what is the input, what is the output, and also it seems like measuring is really important. It's just like testing, just like, back in the days when, I don't know, some people are probably still doing like email funnels, but back in the day when it was like a big strategy, I've made the mistake, at least in my small business, just starting something and letting it go and having no idea if it's working or not. But it seems like the importance of doing that and doing it more often is going to be really important rather than just turning it loose and letting it go.
Absolutely. And I think to layer onto that, where we used to say that activity equaled outcome, meaning that you and your small business sent more emails, you contacted more people, that was the equal to the revenue that would be coming into your business. That no longer is the case because everyone has equal access to send as many emails and spam as many people as they want. It's really how you craft that message, who you're working, what reaching out to, and the clarity around what valuable offer you have to those specific people in their language that's really going to make the difference. So activity no longer equals the outcome.
Yeah. And then I was wondering, switching gears a little
Mhm.
bit to the very, very mature startups. I just find myself working with executives in that space and talk
Mhm.
about moving quickly.
Yeah.
It's moving quickly. There's a huge influx of money, which also has its own, um, it's exciting from a business sense, but also there's a huge psychology behind that. And then also an AI. So, do you have any specific input for mature startups who have proven success, who are maybe even coming out of the, quote unquote, startup phase, and they're in rapid growth mode, um, but they also still have to have the discipline and have the budgets and have the, I don't really say budgets, but the monitoring and a lot of the things we're talking to. So, is there anything specific for these, I would say, mature startups that are really have their wings and they're going to be going through some big changes in the next 6 to 18 months?
Yeah, I think the thing that when I think about stage fit in a company and as a company becomes more mature, the people in that company, the employees that you have brought on have gotten more and more used to having a way of doing things, meaning they have boundaries, they understand which lane they sit in. Whereas a young startup, everyone wears every single hat. People are kind of used to chaos. The more mature you get, the more rigid those roles
Mhm.
become as to what people are addressing. So I think the really important thing when you think about testing AI and communication is being really clear about what you're doing, why you're doing it, the value to that employee, and how it changes the boundaries they had been previously operating in. So, understanding not only what they will be doing different, but how their role interacts with those around them and how that will be impacted. I'm seeing a lot of teams actually, because of the chaos of AI, because things are moving so quickly and boards are dictating that AI be implemented in order to try to drive more revenue, that there becomes less intention with the way that it is implemented. And people are reactive more than proactive. And that causes a lot of frustration, loss of morale within teams. So I would just urge those leaders to be very clear with the communication and still apply that strategic layer that got them to the stage that they are now, even though this is such an up and coming and kind of new frontier when it comes to a tool and technology for us to utilize.
Yeah. And then what about assessing? Because you're saying, I mean, obviously the early stage startups, everybody's just scrambling, trying to do all the things, and then things get more rigid, like you said. But so, and it's possible that when you have a team, at least what I found, sometimes there's teams that have they found amazing people, but perhaps well, now that they're in an end stage, they don't have the mindset or the skills to shift into something else. So I guess what I'm getting at, how important is it to ensure that you have the right people in the right seats, and when and how often does that need to get assessed to stay on top of the revenue?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I think it's always important, no matter the stage, that you have the right people in the right seats. And I would argue that now in this time of AI and everyone implementing AI within their organizations, that humans actually become even more valuable rather than less valuable. So I think that a lot of the feedback that I'm seeing from teammates and leaders is that they are scared of losing their position. There's a lot of fluctuation. They don't understand where companies are going. So I believe the most important point is to give the team and the employees an opportunity to grow and evolve with the organization, defining clearly what that means and what that would look like in practice, and then coach to that. At that point, if they're not evolving, if they're not up leveling and upskilling themselves, then it's probably time to look for a team change. But I see a lot of organizations skip that middle part about being really clear about what it looks like and what the value is so that they
Mhm.
understand where they're headed.
Yeah, and I've also seen, at least through some of the folks that I work with too, is that they start to see positions that they would love that didn't exist prior.
Hmm.
And so sometimes that can be helpful too, to know how to articulate. And then what do you think about another kind of challenge that I've seen arise too is that, different executives are under different pressure than, let's say, the sales team, or, some of the technology folks or what have you. So how important do you think it is for up and coming leaders to be courageous in their voice? Because it seems like it's incredibly important. Because one thing in a recent AI summit, as they were talking about, that makes a lot of sense is that there's a little bit of a flip-flop of power, and that sometimes in more, we're jumping now from startups to more mature companies, but the more mature companies have the more mature leaders
Hmm.
who know that AI is important, but they don't exactly know as much about it as some of the rising leaders, the folks coming in. So it seems like teaching rising leaders how to be courageous, how to communicate, how to have executive presence and a voice, and kind of step in front of a roaring train if it's going in the wrong direction might be important as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think giving any new leader a voice or any rising leader voice is incredibly important. I think this is a great opportunity for a lot of mentorship. I know you mentioned leaders who are more mature in their career. They've done it the hard way. They've seen this exercise many times over. They understand it, but maybe they haven't come to adopt the technology as quickly as some of the younger leaders who don't have the at bats, haven't seen around that corner nearly as many times, but have adapted the technology. I think this is a great time to marry those leaders together to help upskill the more mature leaders into the technology and help educate the newer leader what it looks like to have authenticity, what it looks like to speak out when you see something that doesn't seem like it's landing appropriately, and helping them understand what good looks like. So many times in these organizations, a lot of people are afraid to even take the chance because they're not sure that they'll be able to catch something because they don't have the experience of doing it the hard way first. And so giving them that confidence and even maybe the okay that, hey, we're all going to mess up. We're all going to fail. Nobody quite knows what this playbook looks like. So let's embrace that in an effort for us to accelerate this growth more quickly and impact our revenue in a shorter
Mhm.
timeline.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then last question, what about companies who have invested heavily in AI? They're not seeing the return. And I know that there's not going to be a quick fix, but is there a pivot when it comes to kind of the longer term plan to rewrite that ship?
Yeah, I think a few things. So I've seen a lot of companies go all in and purchase so many tools and technology that utilize AI that it makes it impossible to track who is using what and what is each tool being used for. So I'd say simplification at this point is the name of the game. If you don't understand the ROI of a technology and you've researched it and still can't understand it,
Mhm.
simplify your budget and do the with just less technology. I think the same is looking at how your team's currently utilizing AI and just assessing the outputs of those. So in coaching calls, in your one-on-ones, asking, inquiring, hey, how are you using AI on a daily basis? Show me what that output looks like. And if you as a leader see something that doesn't align with the voice of the company, how you would like your customers to be
Mhm.
interacted with, etc., using that as a coaching mechanism in real time to help everybody learn, grow, and accelerate.
Mhm. That makes a world of sense. So, what is there anything that you would like to share with all the listeners as parting advice? How can they contact you? What would be the best way to reach you?
Absolutely. So you can find me at Purl Advisors, and that's Purl advisors.com. And I'm incredibly active in LinkedIn. I love having conversations about AI, go-to-market strategy, and anything human or leadership related. So please reach out to me.
Amazing. Well, Shannon, all of these things seem like I love them because they seem so important, but they also seem immediately actionable. So, if you were listening to this, and you feel a little bit panicked, don't. Just re-listen to it and write down some action items. These things will be so helpful. Shannon, thank you so much for taking the time, and I look forward to continuing to follow your journey.
Thank you, Sheryl. I appreciate you having me here today.
Of course.